Hey everyone. In the previous session, we used file system MCP to prove that Claude can discover and use external tools correctly. And now we are moving to something much closer to real development work. Instead of just listing files or reading a local project, we're going to connect Claude to GitHub and use it as a part of an actual workflow. So we're going to inspect an issue, create a branch, and then we're going to implement a feature in our local repo and commit the work. And at the end, we're going to open a pull request. The first thing that we need to do for this session is configuring GitHub MCP server so we can use it in our Claude Code applications. If you open your web browser and navigate into github.com, GitHub MCP server, you'll be able to find how to install a GitHub MCP server in Claude applications. And there are lots of ways to do it. And this file might get updated in the future too. So this is the main reference if you're using a GitHub MCP server in your projects. Well, we can open our terminal and install GitHub like we did with the file system, like MCP, add, GitHub, like that. But GitHub requires open authorization standard. That's why we're going to configure it a bit differently. For instance, we need personal access token here. So what we have to do, you're going to follow this here, Claude MCP add JSON by GitHub. And this is the main URL for the GitHub MCP. And we need to provide this headers information to authenticate and authorize our session with a GitHub itself. And for that, we need a personal access token generated by GitHub. So how are you going to create that? So now you need to open your GitHub account, or maybe you can click this GitHub personal access token. So it will open the settings page for you. We need to sign in. There we go. And here you need to give it a name for the token. I'm going to say GitHub MCP. All right, and expiration is in 30 days. And for this, I'm going to select all repositories, or maybe specifically one repository. So we'll have GitHub MCP demo repository. So this is the repository that we're going to use for this session. And let's also add some permissions. Well, you can leave it blank too, but here I've added a few permissions from the list. And generate a new token. There we go. Now we need to copy this and save it to somewhere safe, because you won't be able to see this personal access token in the future. Well, now let's go back to that page. So here it says we need to run the following command in the terminal and not in Claude Code CLI. So I'm going to copy this, open my notepad. I'm going to paste it right here. And for the authorization bearer, your GitHub path, we're just going to copy it and paste it for this one. There we go. And what we're going to do, we're going to copy the full command now with access token and go back to our terminal and paste it right here. Okay, added HTTP MCP server GitHub to local config. What we're going to do, we can start Claude right now. So Claude, and let me increase this window, and we're going to type MCP. And you can see that we have file system and a GitHub, and a GitHub is connected. We can enter, and there we go. So you can see the URL, config location. We have 43 tools available. Well, let's see the tools that we have. So add review comment to the request is okay. Add comment to issue, assign copilot to issue, create branch, create or update file, delete file, fork repository, git commit details. It's pretty good. We have everything that we need to handle development with the GitHub. So when you create big applications with Claude Code And if you're using, for instance, lots of agents and they talk to each other, and one agent can do all this GitHub functions for the entire project development process. All right, this is pretty good. I think we are ready. Welcome back, everyone. In the previous session, we've configured our GitHub MCP server, and now it's time to use the available tools in a real workflow. So for that, I'll be using one public repository on my GitHub account. Here, this is my GitHub account, and I have this repository, GitHub MCP demo repo. So first, we need to clone the repo locally. So here, you can see that we have this URL, or you can use GitHub CLI. I'm going to copy that and open my terminal. So this is for the Claude Code, and this is for the GitHub commands. So I'm going to just paste it right here. Okay. So we can see that we have the folder. We have all the available files. Okay. Well, now let's open the terminal back again. And here, we need to navigate into this folder, right? A CD, GitHub MCP demo repo. Okay. And as you can see, we're in the main branch, and we can actually verify it with this commands: git remote v, here, the main URL, and also git status. Our branch is up to date with origin main branch. So this gives you a clean local repository for Claude Code to edit, while GitHub MCP provides the GitHub site context. Well, now we're going to use a GitHub MCP available tools to inspect the available issue. Let me show you. Here I have one issue on this GitHub MCP repository, and this is the first issue, but the title says issue 15, but it has this description, requirements, and acceptance criteria. And this repository is available at this URL, so you can use it on your own account by creating some kind of a sample repository. So here, let's switch to this PowerShell instance. Well, here we need to start the Claude Code session. I'm going to type Claude. Okay. Now here I'm going to type use GitHub MCP to inspect issue number 1 in, and you need to provide the repository name right here, MCP demo repo, and the local clone is available inside the GitHub MCP demo repo folder. You can use file system MCP tools to inspect if you need. Then I'm going to say summarize the feature request clearly. Then identify the likely local files that need to change. Then finally propose a safe Git a branch a name for the implementation. Do not edit anything yet. All right, let's see. So as you can see, it's using a get issue details, get method, and you can see issue number, repository name, owner. Here I'm gonna select yes. Do you want to proceed for directory tree? I'm gonna put yes to. Okay, let me quickly scan the relevant source files. The pinpoint is where the state is managed. And now it's reading the files. All right, this is beautiful. So issue 1, we're about the feature. So issue 1, the feature summary. The title is persist tasks in local storage. As you can see, it fetched the data about the issue from our issues here from this repository. So yeah, every page reloads, wipes all user changes. This feature asks for a load, save, and startup. Write the current task array to local storage whenever a task is added, toggled, or deleted. And acceptance criteria tasks survive a full page reload. First step of load still shows the seeded data. This is good. So files that need to change, we have app.js, data.js, and HTML. Oh, we don't need any changes for data.js and HTML. This is only for the app.js. Okay. The entire implementation fits inside app.js. So it's going to replace this and that. And the proposed branch name is this: feature issue 1 local storage persistence. This is awesome. So as you can see, this prompt makes Claude use GitHub issue context first, translate the issue into coding work, propose a branch name, and avoid editing too early. And this is exactly what's going to happen in real world. Overall, Claude is not guessing from a pasted task description. It's pulling the issue context directly from GitHub through MCP, then combining that with a local project structure. Now we're going to use the branch name Claude proposed here, this one. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to create that in our environment. So here we are inside the GitHub MCP demo repository. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write a git checkout, and here let's just put -b for the branch. There we go. Switch to a new branch. Then we can verify it. Git branch show current. Okay. Git status. Okay, nothing committed for now. The working tree is clean. So what I'm doing is that we're creating the branch locally because the actual code still lives in my local repository. And the GitHub MCP gives Claude the GitHub context, but the implementation work still happens here in the project, here in my machine. Now let's go back to Claude Code. So here, I'm going to type implement issue 1 from my repository name, a GitHub MCP demo repo, in this local repository. Follow the requirements like persist tasks in local storage, load tasks from local storage if present, and fall back to seeded tasks if nothing is saved, and also follow the constraints. Well, this prompt can be much more longer, explaining all the constraints like do not refactor the unrelated code, reuse the current code style, then make changes. But for this demonstration, it is pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press enter for this. Now it has the context, it has the available knowledge about the project, it will make correct changes. I'm going to select the second one, is allow all edits during this session, and you're going to just watch the changes. All right, done. So here's what changed. So we have storage key, load tasks, save task functions. Okay. Modified repetition functions, add task, toggle task. So also unmodified these functions. All three acceptance criteria are now met. A task survive reload, toggle delete the state persists, and a fresh load with no save data still shows the 3 seeded tasks, which is great. Now let's switch to this instance. Let me first clear this up. So what we're going to do, we're going to type a git status. And there we go. We have changes. So we have changes on app.js file only. So what we're going to do, we're going to see the difference. Git difference --stat. 1 file changed, 15 insertions, 1 deletion, and git diff. So you'll be able to see all the changes that happened. So what's really happening is that I always stop here and inspect the actual changes. This is not a trust the robot and hope for some kind of a enlightenment workflow. Claude can move fast, but still, I want to review the exact difference before I commit anything to the repository. Here, to close this difference window, you're going to just press Q. Okay, let me clear this again. So Now, what we're going to do, we're going to ask Claude for a concise implementation summary, like what happens. So let's switch back to Claude Code session, and I'm going to type summarize the implementation for issue 1 in, and also need to provide the repository name specifically, GitHub MCP demo repo, and then give me a short human readable summary. The files changed, the key behavior added, and any assumptions or limitations. So this gives you clean language for the commit and pull request body. I'm gonna press enter right here. There we go. You can pause and read it. So we're gonna continue. What we're gonna do, we're gonna stage everything and commit the work. Now let's switch to this instance. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna stage everything. So git add, okay, then git commit m feature persist tasks in local storage. Okay, there we go. And now we need to push the changes. So we're going to type git push -u origin, and we have a feature branch. So feature is going to be issue -1 local storage persistence. Okay, there we go. So what I'm doing is that I'm doing the local git steps manually here because it keeps the workflow visible and easy to follow. The clever part is not hiding the git. The best part is that Claude already understood the issue and helped implement the change in a way that matches the repo. Now let me open my web browser. I'm gonna, I already see that there's a change. So we can compare, create a pull request, and apply the changes. But rather than doing this on this web page, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make Claude to use GitHub MCP to do that. So first, we're gonna ask Claude to draft the PR first and make the final changes. Now let's finish this up. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write this prompt using GitHub MCP at the current implementation for issue 1 in project repository goes right here. So GitHub MCP demo repo. And here, draft a pull request title and body. And here, I'm gonna say include what changed, why it changed, a brief testing note maybe, and a closing reference to the issue. Do not create the full request yet. If you're asking, why don't you just create the pull request? Well, I like drafting the pull request first instead of creating it immediately. It gives me a pause point to check the wording before, Claude takes an external action. Now let me press enter right here. There we go. So title this, body, wait, change, testing, notes, limitations, closes the first issue, ready to create the pull request whenever you give the go ahead. Well, here goes the final prompt. Now use GitHub MCP to create the pull request in this repo. Use base branch, which is main, and head branch is this feature issue 1 local storage persistence. And then use the title and body we just drafted. So this is where the workflow comes together. Claude used GitHub MCP at the beginning to understand the issue, then helped implement the feature locally, and now it's using GitHub MCP again to package that work back into GitHub as a pull request. And as you can see, tool use saying that open your pull request. This is information that it's sending, and I'm gonna select this. Well, we have an issue, so validation failed. That means that the head branch, this doesn't exist on the remote yet. The commits were only made locally. All right, now I understand. Here, Claude will use this command to get the status of the changes. Get status, git branch A, check global get status branch. Okay, I'm gonna press yes. Okay, the branch exists on the remote, but with a slightly different name. All lowercase. I think I used, where was it? Yeah, this one. It should be all lowercase. And there we go. PR created. We can control click. Yes, we managed to create the pull request. And now it's also ready to merge. As you can see, Claude Code is actually smart. It understood the error and said that this is wrong because this local storage has a uppercase right here. This all should be a lowercase, and it fixed that, updated, created the pull request, and everything is as expected now. So as you can see, this is the real value of GitHub MCP in Claude Code. So basically, it's not just a list of remote tools. It gives the Claude access to issue, the repository context that shapes the work while, still fitting into a normal local development workflow. Well, we went from issue to branch to implementation to pull request, and that's a workflow developers actually care about. In the previous session, we used GitHub MCP in a real workflow. Claude Code read a real GitHub issue, helped implement the feature in the local repository, and then helped to turn that work into a pull request. That's the exciting part, but once an agent can actually do useful work, the next question becomes, how do you keep that workflow controlled? Well, that is what this session is about. I'm going to add an AGENTS.md file to this repository and use it as a lightweight guidance layer for Claude. This helps agents stay focused, follow repository-specific workflow expectations, and also avoid doing random side quests in the codebase. Here, we are inside MCP examples folder, which is the root folder, and this is the project folder. Inside this folder right here, the root folder, we have agents.md file. This is very basic, but this is a good example to explain what agents.md is. Well, agents.md file is not some magical hidden Claude Code config file. Think of it more like a README for coding agents. This is an open convention used across projects to give AI coding tools a predictable place to find workflow guidance, coding expectations, and validation steps. And there are also repository rules. The idea is simple. Humans get readme.md file, agents get agents.md. Now, for Claude Code specifically, the native persistent instructional file is actually claude.md, right? Not agents.md. Well, Claude Code loads claude.md files as a part of its memory system at the start of sessions. Those instructions guide behavior, but they're still treated as context, not hard enforcement. If you would like to follow this one, you'll be able to find this agents.md file from project files, of course, or you can take a second and create a real minimal agents file with your own rules. Well, the things I care about here are pretty simple. So you're going to keep the changes scope to the issue, avoid unrelated refactors, explain the plan before editing, use a predictable Git branch naming pattern like this. This is like a template for agents, and also validate the work in the simplest and sensible way. Now I like to start Claude Code session in our terminal. So let me switch this one and type Claude. And here I'm going to give a prompt like read the repository guidance from agents.md, then explain what rules you should follow in this repo, how those rules affect a GitHub MCP workflow, and what kinds of actions you should avoid unless explicitly asked. All right, let's see what's going to happen. Searching for agent.md file. Okay, actions avoid unless explicitly asks. These are the things I should not do on my own, like merging pull requests, creating pull requests without drafting. How these rules affect the GitHub MC workflow. Create branch must use this. So as you can see, when using this create branch tool from GitHub MCP in the future, they will follow this template. So also for the create pull request tool function must draft and show pull request text before calling this. Now this kind of workflow is a good practice. And you can see working style, a Git workflow, validation, communication. Be concise, ask for larger structural change, don't autonomously restructure. So as you can see, with the power of simple agents.md file, we are giving structure, a plan, a style, and template for the changes that's going to be made by Claude Code and using other MCP servers. So overall, this was the first thing I want you to show. As you can see, agents.md changes the way the workflow is framed. Instead of just charging into edits, Claude is being nudged toward a specific working style. Now let me open my web browser. Here, this is the repository that we are using for this session, and we've actually closed one issue, and I also merged the changes. But I have a new issue now, and it's very simple, and it has only a title, not a description at all. The title says, add an empty state when search returns no tasks. And the issue number is 3 right here. So what we're going to do, we're going to ask Claude Code to read this new issue, okay? And use the updated workflow, the template, the rules to create some kind of a plan. So right here, I'm going to type use GitHub MCP to inspect issue number 3, like this. And I'm going to provide the repository name, GitHub MCP demo repository. And then before making any changes, restate the issue clearly, explain the implementation plan, and also identify the file or files most likely to change, right? Then explain how you will follow the guidance in agents.md during this workflow. And also do not edit anything yet, right? So as you can see, I have not given the full name of the repository right here. That's why it's asking me to use this get my profile tool. I mean, the function from GitHub MCP. And I'm going to, of course, give this permission. There we go. And now it's using get issue details. So as you can see, if you don't provide the full context about the which repository that you're talking about, it asks and looks for the GitHub profile. And now use the get issue details command. Number 3, as you can see, add an empty state when search returns no tasks. Okay, GitHub get file or directory contents. Now it needs to read the data. Okay, so what happens? Issue 3 restated clearly. So this is the title that we have. So what it means, when a user types into the search box and no tasks match the query, the task list is left usually empty, blank space with no feedback. The issue asks for a visible empty state message. No tasks match your search to appear instead, which is good. And you also have this implementation plan. Files most likely to change, the JS file and CSS file. Here, this is the how Claude follows the agents.md. So as you can see, stage scope to issue 3, explain before the changes. Editing will create this one. We'll use feature at empty state for no results for the conventional commit. Drafts pull request text before creating. Okay, summarizes after implementation. Now we can do a little bit of a optional follow-up prompt for this based on AGENTS.md. Tell me what you will intentionally avoid doing while implementing this issue. So in short, I implement the minimum change that says files issue 3, confirm with you at each reversible step, branch creation, pull request creation, and stop there. Okay, so code scope, no refactoring unrelated code, Git, communication, I'm making larger structural changes, and yes. So that makes the guardrails very visible. Well, this is the ending of GitHub MCP with Claude Code. Here, this is the value of adding repository guidance on the top of a GitHub MCP. Well, Claude is still using the same powerful tools, but now it's approaching the work with clearer boundaries, a tighter scope, and a more predictable behavior. So the goal is here not to repeat the full implementation cycle with the same tools, GitHub MCP tools. The goal is to show how guidance shapes the workflow before code changes even begin.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, you'll love Zenva Academy. 300 courses where you learn AI by building real apps. Links in the description.